This is the Magician and the Fool podcast, episode number 53. My name is Dominic. My co-host's name is Janus, and you will hear from him once we get into the interview. Today we speak to Finnish author Vesa Iitti about his new book, Lightbringers of the North, Secrets of the Occult Tradition of Finland. Vesa is a Finnish writer and translator with a master's degree in comparative religion from the University of Turku. Now, we didn't know much about Finnish occultism going into this interview, and we learned a bunch from this book and from this author. Do you know anything about modern Finnish occultism? Well, if not, then you're about to learn some things. As always, we give big thanks to our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for partnering with us on this journey, with this experiment that we're doing of the podcast. You know, we don't make a ton off of Patreon, but it is nice to be able to offset some of the costs of making the podcast for sure. It's also nice to know that people are willing to partner with us to continue this journey. If you would like to sign on with us and help support what we're doing, please feel free to do so. Run over to Patreon, just type in Magician and the Fool podcast, and donate what makes sense to you. We dedicate this to Hermes and Asclepius, and may any merits that we accumulate doing this work be distributed to all sentient beings, so that they together with us may equally realize awakening. Welcome to the show. We are very excited to have Vesa Iitti, and I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but it's good enough according to Vesa. Welcome to the show. We're here to talk about your new book and everything Finnish as far as occultism goes.
Thank you. It's an honor to be your guest.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this. Trying to get it scheduled has been fun, but we finally got our act together, and here we are. So the book is called Lightbringers of the North, Secrets of the Occult Tradition of Finland. Mm-hmm. And I think this will be an interesting episode because I don't know that people outside of Europe, specifically United States, are that well educated on Finnish spirituality, Finnish occultism. So this will be a good introduction, I think, for most of our listeners. Mm-hmm. So if you don't mind, we'll start with a little bit about yourself, how and why you undertook this project. We also want to acknowledge your co-author, Perttu, who is no longer with us, if you want to talk about him a little bit as well, and we'll just go from there.
Sure. The story begins in 2014. There was this book fair in Helsinki, where I was talking about my translation of Janne de Salzman's The Reality of Being. And after the talk, Perttu approached me and told me that this, I have an idea, like how about we write a book about the history of Finnish esotericism or occultism, framing it to time from roughly beginning from the independence of Finland. We became independent in 1917, and what comes after that. I was like, I didn't know Perttu that well back then, and I wasn't too enthusiastic about the book and the idea for the book in the beginning. So I was like, well, that's interesting. Let's think about it. And I left it at that. And like 3 months later, Perttu came back to me and asked, like, how about that book? Like, have you thought about it? I was like, actually not. Like, I'm not quite convinced about the whole idea. But we talk more and more, and I kind of get an idea that, there might be something into this. This might be a great idea. And so we decided that, all right, let's do this. And we decided to look for the potential publisher, which we found very quickly, and got the deal very quickly. And it came from there. Perttu approached me, of all the people, regarding the book, because he was familiar with the books I had written earlier and translated, and I was having quite popular blog at the time that lots of people read, and he got an impression that I had an approach that he likes. I have a sense of humor that he likes, and that we have a chemistry that works. And so it went from there, and he was right. Our team worked really well. We had an absolutely great time together, and then the book was published by this Liikekustannus in 2015, the Finnish version, and it became an immediate success. The second print, well, it went into the printing machines already like 2 weeks after the first print, and we got a huge amount of attention from all kinds of media, from the big news to the radio and all the newspapers and so forth. And 2 occult walking tours were arranged in Turku and Helsinki, and 1 theater play in northern part of Finland in the city of Oulu was inspired by the book, and stuff like that. So that's a short story about how the Finnish version came to be, and it's another story like how this English edition came to be. Do you want me to?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Okay. So long story short, so immediately after the Finnish version of the book came out in 2015, Perttu really wanted to get it also in English. He kindly nudged me every now and then that, hey, how about this English version, like that? Because you've translated books earlier, maybe you could do this too, because we didn't have a funding or grants to get some professional translator to translate it into English. So of course we would have saved that money and got it done quicker maybe. I was busy with other things back then, and I was thinking that we'll do this later, not now. And well, Perttu returned to me with this thing every now and then, like to the very year 2018, when he unfortunately passed away in a bicycle accident. And after that, I got things done that I was busy with, and it really came to me that this feeling that Perttu really wanted to get this book in English. He called it, to use Aleister Crowley's terminology, Perttu called it part of our great work, both him and mine, and that he really wanted to get it in English. And I got Perttu even in my dreams a few times telling me that this needs to be finished, this project. Like he didn't leave me alone. So I thought that this is a matter of honor. This is really a matter of honor to a dear friend. And it's a good idea as such in general. Like, all right, I need to finish this now. So I contacted Inner Traditions that Perttu had made an initial contact already in 2015. And I continued talking with John Graham, who Perttu had also been in contact with. And we talked about it. I sent him sample chapters, rough translations, and then he gave green light to the book. And then I translated the rest, and I had a very good proofreading and editing team. And well, now we're here. The book is finally out also in English, and that's fantastic. Like, it's been a great process, and I've been extremely happy working with people from inner traditions, and also my Finnish proofreaders and the proofreaders and editors from America. Absolutely brilliant people, professional, and it's been great pleasure working with all of them. And the book wouldn't be out there without their help and work with me. So
great.
Finally, we're here, and it's. I feel good about it.
Good. So congratulations.
Absolutely, it's an excellent book too. I love it. I think it's well written. I like the cover. I mean, the whole thing, I really enjoyed every minute of it. To me, though, like, even though the book starts with it, still my favorite figure in the book is probably Pekka Airas. Mm-hmm. I just find him to be so intriguing. And it's a little sad to me, too, because I feel like he didn't get he was, experienced rebuttals and setbacks. He reminded me a little bit of a Finnish Franz Barden in some ways, too. But I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about Pekka.
Yeah, Pekka Airas, as you said, the first chapter of the book is about him. He was a very influential person, not only in esoteric occult circles of Finland, but in the cultural atmosphere of that time in general. He was born 1875, died 1934. He joined the Theosophical Society at a very, very early age with the permission of his father, because he was so young back then that he needed permission of the parents to join the society. And he had a very important role in bringing Theosophical Society to Finland, and he had important positions inside of it, of course. And in addition to Theosophical Society, he was also bringing this Le Droit Humain type of Freemasonry to Finland, the type of Freemasonry that allows both men and women to be members. So he had an important role in that as well. And when he got, the things get too difficult with Theosophical Society, he founded his own society, Ruusuristi, can be translated into Rose Cross. He was politically left-leaning, very much Kalevala, the national epic of Finland, inspired. Interestingly, when it comes to his political leanings, regardless of being clearly left-leaning, he did his best to keep distance to politics and getting involved with politics. He saw that theosophy was something that needed to be kept separate from politics. And when there became these internal struggles in Theosophical Society, he did really his best to try to be a kind of diplomat inside the society, to get people together and to focus really on what Theosophy was all about, this concept of brotherhood and truth behind all religions and all of that, instead of fighting against each other. So he really focused what was kind of a deeper focus instead of some political manifestations.
And that's much different than a lot of the other characters that you cover in the book as far as politics goes.
Yeah, there are some people who were totally different in that. Interestingly enough, something else that I would add is that, this was in the very, very beginning, early part of the last century. Airas, when it came to politics and kind of political vision that was kind of guided by spiritual wisdom or insight, he envisioned basically European Union and a one common currency in Europe. That was very, very like ahead of time, like about over 100 years ago or so. But lo and behold, here we are. We have the European Union, and most of the countries here have euro as the one currency that is all right to all the countries. So he was ahead of time.
And another thing I like about him is the way that from an early age he had several visions. I mean, he was truly a visionary, having interior mystical experiences. And I think on the front of the book even, there's that prophecy that Blavatsky had about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was this message that this, what was her name, Wachtmeister. Anyway, it was a person who worked with Blavatsky very closely. And Ervast met her, this Wachtmeister. I think it was in Stockholm, in Sweden anyway. And this person told to Ervast that Blavatsky has said so. It's kind of a message to Ervast. And it went roughly like that. There will become a time when the world looks so dark and difficult, and even theosophists like are not sure, but like what is theosophy all about, and how to do things and so on. Then everybody should look towards Finland because the light will come from there. So this kind of message Ervas got through this person who was close to Blavatsky. Blavatsky was, of course, inspired by Finnish culture, also very much because of the national epic Kalevala that she had apparently read and really liked what she read. She wrote, I think, 2 short papers about her impressions of Kalevala and so on. She was very, very positive about that too. So yeah, but coming back to the vision or this point that you said about light coming from Finland, this was the message that Ervast got from Blavatsky.
Hey Vesa, you mentioned Kalevala. Can you please, because it is so important to this whole topic, and I'm thinking that a lot of people aren't familiar with it outside of Finland. Can you please talk about that a bit?
Yeah, sure. Kalevala, the national epic of Finland, was originally published 1835. It was a collection, a compilation made by Elias Lönnroth. He basically collected folk poetry from the eastern part of Finland, this area called Karelia. It was a folk poetry about how the world was born, the myth about the beginning of the world, and all kind of these themes that you can find from epics of different nations, different cultures, and so Lönnroth basically collected this kind of folk poetry about all these kind of themes, and also there's lots of magical materials involved, like how to use like an origin of words in magic and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, he collected this huge amount of folk poetry and put together from there this Kalevala a bit creatively, made it into the epic. That was, of course, came out 1835, the first edition, late that century, and so of course it was time of getting this growing sense of national identity. Finland became independent in 1917, but this was time in general, national romantic ideas and all of that, and Kalevala needs to be put in this kind of historical context, that this kind of things were in the air in the world in general. And this really inspired lots of artists, this national epic artists, and of course people who were interested in esotericism, esoteric topics, occultism, and just the layman when it came to like who we are and what kind of things connect us. Like there was the language, of course, the geographical area and everything, but now we had also this national epic that told a kind of a mythical past, if you will, of the nation and its mythical heroes, the Väinämöinen and the main hero that is basically a poem singing hero that uses his like skills in verbal magic, and he travels like from this world to the underworld and back, and comes with the wisdom and then there are all these other magical characters in the book. This book was very, very important for the nation in general. And after we became independent, 1917, not just Kalevala, but other folk materials too. All of this huge corpus of this folk material dealing with all the ideas about the structure of the world, really in the metaphysical way, and the magical means to effect things inside of it, and all kind of spiritual entities that there are. All these pre-Christian ideas, they've been very inspiring to artists, occultists, ever since we became independent, and also before of that. And as you read through the book, you've noticed that the name of Kalevala pops up here and there. And
yes,
it was in the Ervas time, it was important for Pekka Airas already, but it comes up like a much later too, like a totally different kinds of esotericists and esoteric groups have found inspiration from Kalevala and other these folk materials, and it's still there. It's been a very important book, not just to people in general, but also to the occultist, esotericists of Finland.
Is it still looked at and admired in the same way in the present day?
I can't, like when I think of it right now, if I can think of any special groups or individuals who would like really underline it. I can't remember, like I can't get to my mind right now anybody or any group that would pay special attention to it. But I'm sure that there are like people, especially when it comes to the neo-pagan groups and everything in that direction, like especially those people, they find this kind of folk poetry and materials like relevant and inspiring in a special way. Although there are other people too, like also in the UFO circles, like this Kalevi Riikonen, who is one very famous contactee. He talks like very positively about Kalevalan culture and refers to this kind of mythical Kalevala world and things related. So it's there and it's still influencing very different types of people.
Would you say that that epic is kind of a bridge between the older Finnish kind of indigenous spirituality and the more modern spirituality and occultism that you covered in your book? Does that make sense?
Certainly, it's a one bridge, one chain in a huge spectrum of influences that carry these ideas from the past and are very popular as such. But it's just one. Like there are other important works too, like Christfrid Genander. He lived in the 18th century. He wrote this very important book called Mythologica Fennica. That was, I think, the first work to put in the between covers, like what kind of entities and ideas there is in the Finnish mythology and these folk ideas of these things. There's been all other kinds of books and channels to bring to this day the old ideas from a pre-Christian, more pagan culture and so. But Kalevala is one of them, and probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular. It's an important link.
Okay, and if I'm understanding correctly, it was also important in helping reaffirm a Finnish identity as it relates to Russia. Is that right?
Absolutely. It was a very important part of giving people this idea that we are Finns as a nation. We are Finns. We are separate. We are not Swedes. We are not Russians. We want to be Finns. Yeah. And the epic was very important. One piece in this whole puzzle, that we have our own culture, we have our own epic, and we have our own myths, our own stories. It was, and in that time, it was very important. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, and building on that idea of nationalism, I guess something in the book that I thought was interesting is you covered a lot of diverse characters and historical figures in this Finnish occult world, but you didn't sugarcoat a lot of their flaws. And there's a lot of problematic and troubling characters, or characters with troubling views in the book. A lot of neo-Nazi sympathies and admiration amongst some of these individuals. And you weren't shy about just kind of laying out the facts. Why do you think there was so much of this kind of neo-Nazi, like I said, sympathy? Do you think it had to do a lot with the just kind of opposition to Russian communism? Was that the major kind of point or reason for this? Or what do you think? Because it's kind of the elephant in the room as far as the book. When I was reading it, I did notice a lot of these individuals had admiration for Hitler and things like that. And so I thought it'd be interesting if you could kind of talk about that too.
Yeah, well, to begin with, yes, we didn't want to sugarcoat these characters or their stories, but told us their stories as they are, and what they were thinking and what they were doing, and put their stories and the persons also in a historical context, right. What was the context? That's very important. There's this whole chapter about occultism, nationalism, where I would say most, if not all, of these characters that somehow link with national socialism pop up. There is this Sigurd Vettenhovi Aspa, to begin with, who died 1946. He had this crazy ideas that Finnish language was basically the root language of the whole world, and that Finnish people, in their past, that we were actually also in ancient Egypt and so forth. In the beginning of the last century, he was pretty much pro Nazi Germany. He painted this huge painting of Adolf Hitler, for example, in his honor. And then there is the story of Yrjö von Grönhagen, who became a really, really close friend with Heinrich Himmler, and even more close friend with Karl Maria Willigat, who of course had a very important role when it comes to influences to Himmler, and creating this myth about Nazi Germany and their Aryan magical past and all of that. Grönhagen was very closely involved with this kind of inner circle people, and he was naturally sympathetic to their cause. He was not a really a deep practitioner himself or anything, but he had an interesting role with these people who had very important role in creating of this myth related to Nazi Germany and their connection to the Aryan past and so forth. Then there is this Väinö Kuisma, who was this right-wing nationalist who draw lots of inspiration from Kalevala, of which we talked earlier. And of course, then there's this whole chapter about this Pekka Airas, the most probably infamous character of the whole book. Airas lived 1944 to 2003. He mixed politics and occultism. He was basically very comical neo-Nazi who was a devil worshipper who worshipped devil to honor God. And he was quite something. When it comes to Airas, he's like his infamous action started in the 70s, and this was the time when we were politically all right, we were officially independent nation, but we had this special kind of relationship with Russia. They basically were telling what we should think and do in our in own politics and stuff. It was a very, very suppressing times, and there were lots of people who, of course, opposed this and felt bad about this in many ways. And well, Airas, who was what he was he was very much into questioning everything and opposing things in general. So, well, he was a devil worshipper, of course, when it comes to this kind of place in history and geographically being right next to the Russia, who was too much meddling with our own politics. It was not a big surprise that a person like Airas decided or felt that I'm going to be openly a neo-Nazi because it's a huge middle finger to the whole situation and to the Russia and communism that he hated. And so it's in this kind of context when it comes to Airas. The other people mentioned earlier, like Bettenhovi Aspa or Yrjö von Grönhagen, they were, of course, early last century, and it was a bit different, the whole thing, and their relationship to Nazi ideology was different. They lived during the time when the Nazi Germany was still there, and there wasn't this historical distance that that we have now, and it's now easy to judge those people and all of that. But they were living there, and it was a political reality. And so they were not nothing like Airas, but clearly like Finland in general. When it comes to the Second World War, we were allies with Nazi Germany at one point, and it was just the realities of the times and our position on the world map. And because of that, some people felt this way, the others that way, and also some occultists aired their views and what they think of these things. So yeah, this comes partly to the things that what makes Finnish occultism or national occultism or esotericism what it is, what kind of things have colored it. One is our geology, our position on the map. We are kind of between east and west, and then we have our history, and things go together, everything affects everything. So it's a puzzle of many pieces.
Right. Yeah, it's very complicated. So thank you for kind of giving an overview, because it can be kind of a sensitive topic to a lot of people. So I think it's worth at least mentioning.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about Tatarisuo next. I probably am butchering the word, but what an intriguing, unusual, bizarre situation.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we jump into that. You pronounce it so well that I absolutely understood what you meant. So Tatarisuo, magic circle. Do I just give an overview of what it was about?
That's up to you. I mean, however you want to penetrate the subject. That's such an interesting chapter in the book. I don't want to pass over it because it's so crazy, that situation.
Yeah, this seems to be a favorite of almost anybody who I talk about the book. It just seems to pop up in every discussion, and I understand why. It's such a bizarre, fascinating, crazy, So this Tattarisua Magic Circle, they are located in early 1930s. It was a group of working class, little educated people. There was like 5-6 people involved. The whole story started when in 1930 they found a hand from this spring or well from Tattarisua area. It's a kind of industrial area close in the Helsinki area. And nobody seemed to be missing the hand. So so the police just basically forgot it because they had more pressing issues to work on. And nobody talked about that until 1 year later. One driver who was going to drink from this spring, this well, found other body parts from the same well and contacted a local newspaper, and the whole thing got out of hand there. Like it became a huge news throughout the whole country, and it was covered in all possible news, what's going on, there is some weird, apparently like a ritual magic being done there with body parts on this spring there in this Helsinki industrial area. What's going on, what kind of a cult it is, and all of that. It was found out that those body parts were not from any people who were murdered, but they had been cut from people who were already dead. And these guys of this cult, it was found out later that they actually went to this close by a cemetery where there were these coffins waiting to be buried. They were coffins for very poor people, and for them, they waited that they get maybe 6-8 coffins to be buried at the same time. And so if you wanted to go and check inside those coffins before they were really buried, you had a good opportunity for that. So this group, its members, they went there and cut the body parts from those coffins, and they used them as you could say seals. They thought that if they placed these body parts as seals to this spring, this treasure that they imagined was there in this spring, that it would pop up to the surface and they would get all these treasures, all these golden coins and whatever. Surprisingly, they didn't ever get any treasure. Maybe they would have need more body parts. So who knows? I don't know, but they didn't get any treasure, but they really tried. In these bizarre rituals, they used this grimoire that is known elsewhere in the world as the 6th and the 7th book of Moses. In Finland is known basically as Musta Raamattu, which literally translates into the Black Bible. I have no idea why those who published the book the first time in the beginning of last century, why they chose that Finnish name for the book, probably because it just sounds more fascinating and sells better.
Sure.
But that's the name that it's known basically in Finland. So they used this book in these bizarre rituals. And in addition to this magical treasure hunting or trying to get this treasure up from the spring, they also were in magical wars against right-leaning people of Finland during that time, and also against Freemasons. At the end of their career, also against each others. And they were doing some very interesting channeling of other worlds and spiritual entities. Yeah, basically that's it in a nutshell, what they were doing. And this was in 1930s, and it was a huge shock to the whole nation. And so
this whole situation to me seemed like an H.P. Lovecraft story almost. I mean, because they're seeing visions on the walls of their apartments, and they're digging up bodies and cutting hands off of them, and the guys saying insane things like, I am the great, I'm, by God's great power, I am going to save the universe. It's just the whole thing was just totally insane. And I actually found it interesting that most of them seem to be of moderate to low intelligence.
Yeah, that's a funny idea that it's like from a Lovecraft novel. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
What was the background? I mean, is it just the sixth and seventh books of Moses that influenced this? Like, where did they get these ideas? Was it just their leader that kind of was channeling these ideas, or?
If I remember right, it was this Vilho Kallio, Vilho Warlock Kallio, Noita Kallio. He was the leader of the whole group, really grim-looking guy who lived very ascetic life. He had a background of doing healing practices, and there were people who actually reported that he had succeeded in healing their problems. And so he never asked any money for what he did, but he had kind of a conditions based on which he decided if he's going to help a person or not. And so he had this kind of healing practice background, and he moved to Helsinki. At some point he met one lady who was a member of this group, and I think it was during one of their channeling of other words that this woman, she got this vision that they need body parts, and and the whole thing started from there. And,
wow.
Well, I think at that point already, this Vilho Kallio had already had this sixth and seventh book of Moses for quite some time. They were, of course, familiar also with other occult, spiritualist materials of the time, like what there was, theosophical literature, anthroposophical literature, all these kind of things. But because they were quite little educated and not the smartest persons around, I guess they didn't feel like that they would want to join any of those societies. They somehow felt that they didn't feel at home there. So they came up with this crazy alchemical synthesis of their own ideas, and eventually ended up with their own magic circle. So
very bizarre and interesting chapter. So you've mentioned Blavatsky. We've talked about theosophy a little bit, but theosophy seems to have had a major influence, at least in on a lot of the characters, if not all of them, that you outline in the book. Can you talk about that a little bit, as well as the influence of Steiner and Gurdjieff as well?
Yeah, sure. One short little addition about this Tattariso case that I haven't mentioned earlier in the interviews to the podcast or so. Interesting angle was that at some point the police was suspecting that there is somehow some British person involved with this cult, and the Finnish police asked help in investigating who this British person could be from Scotland Yard, and who could be such an evil person in the world who might be involved with something like this kind of horrible things. Well, Aleister Crowley was a British, and he, of course, had a huge reputation for doing all kind of horrible things. So there's a good chance that he was a suspect being involved with the whole case. But, I guess they did their job well and find out that to Megatherion didn't have anything to do with this Finnish craziness. This was something else. Yeah, but to the Theosophical Society and its influence, you're right. It had a huge influence to many persons in the book, not all, but many. And of course, beginning with Pekka Airas, that part of the story is located to the very beginning of last century, and this was in general in Europe a time when this kind of new religious movements and ideas were like getting stronger in general, and they were fresh and new, and they offered something new in Western cultures, Europe, States too, of course. There was in the air criticism against old societal structures in general and old religious ideas in general, like official Christianity was criticized. People were looking for something new, and there came these new ideas like a theosophical society, and with that, of course, like Rudolf Steiner, anthroposophy, and all these things. And Gurdjieff was there, of course, in the mix as well, and many, many other peoples and movements. So this was the kind of a cultural atmosphere in general where theosophy too was operating, and it was something that was tried to put to serve also like political ideas, because they went so much hand in hand, like a criticism of spiritual ideas, old spiritual kind of ideas, and the societal structure. And so, as I mentioned earlier, Ervas tried to stay away from politics as much as possible, but he kind of still there from the background wanted to influence people like that. Okay, that if you are a socialist, you're like a left-leaning. It's not enough that you're materialist, that you should like have also spiritual wisdom guiding you. So that way things would go better. And so, but theosophical society, it influenced in Finland not only just like a esotericists, occultists, but also artists in general. And I would say like people of all levels of society in general. There must have been all kinds of people who were inspired by it, that got something out of it. And when it comes to, of course, offshoots of theosophical society, like anthroposophy, Steiner's ideas, they are still here too, just like theosophical society. They are still in existence in Finland. Their number of the members is rather small, and their average age of their members is also very high. So they should got some fresh blood to keep going, really. But they made a huge impact back then. And well, we still have things like in Finland, there are what we call Steiner-koulut, like Steiner schools. There are schools that are based on Rudolf Steiner's pedagogical ideas. They are accepted to be like official schools because their curriculum follows what is required from schools in Finland in general for education. But they have the Steiner pedagogic emphasis back there on the background, and it's very interesting. I've done myself some teaching jobs in a local Steiner school, and I've seen how it differs like from the regular school. So these kind of things are here, still here, and that's very, very interesting. Theosophy in general, if we run through the book and its characters and organization, these groups, these magical societies, can be found from all kinds of directions, like Pekka Airas. Then there is this Aino Kassinen, who died 1977. She was a kind of a clairvoyant of the nation, self-taught helper. There was a lot of this kind of theosophical influence in her practices. Also in the Seaton, this notorious devil-worshipping neo-Nazi that we mentioned, he had a huge influence also from theosophy and Steiner. And theosophy influenced also these nationalistic ideas in the country, and Jorma Elovaara, who is famous for his radio show from the late 60s, early 70s, Vesimiehen aika, the age of the Aquarius, was in the well, mainstream Finnish radio. He was a kind of a herald of this new age of Aquarius, hippie esotericism, basically the same that I was in the States too, like what it was like there. I talk about drugs and UFOs and all these popular themes. He was a herald of that, and theosophy was very important for him too. I think it was the cornerstone of his like a magical thinking. And theosophical thinking can be found from people who are in the UFO scene. And of course, J.R.R Bock, chapter 11, this guy who created his own saga about the history of the world and how his family was guarding the secret of the real past, and how he was like having keys to the secrets of the real meanings of the words, and so he was clearly also like a familiar with theosophical ideas. And one of the more like interesting angles when it comes to theosophy and getting theosophical inspiration to one's own ideas is probably found like from this group called Azazelin Tähti, the Star of Azazel. It's still existing Finnish left-hand path magical organization. Most of the members are from Finland, but my impression is they have members also worldwide. So they say they are a left-hand path organization, kind of Satanist, I would say. But at the same time, at least the founder of the group, this Johannes Nephastos, who is a prolific writer too, he has got clearly lots of influence from theosophy and also from the teachings of Jesus, like the Sermon of the Mount. So theosophical influence can be traced all the way back to like a Pekka Airas and people of this time. And it's still there, like in a surprising places, like some left-hand path organization today in Finland. So it's clearly very, very influential ideas.
Very interesting. Thank you for kind of laying that out for us. Janice, you still there?
Well, I thought it might be cool to touch on a little UFO, the interest in UFOs, the UFO craze in Finland. That might be fun to discuss.
Yeah, that's a chapter of its own, chapter 9 of the book. This gives basically an overview of what's been going on here. Like it begins with this folkloristic tale that tells of a very, very early kind of folkloristic tale about encounter with a UFO and its influence on this little village of people. And from there, the story opens. We go through a story of this Margit Lilius Mustapa, who was a ballet dancer in Finnish National Opera. She emigrated to the States later, wrote 2 books of her experiences in the 50s of UFOs and alien encounters. There are also other case stories and one abduction story in the chapter. One of the main cases when it comes to Finnish ufology that needs to be mentioned is this Pudasjärvi UFO craze. Pudasjärvi is more like a northern part of Finland. It was it began 1969 and reached I think till 1973. There were lots of sightings of various very oddly behaving balls of light. They were also photographed quite well. I think dozens of people witnessed these, and these were behaving in the way that they clearly were not like some natural light phenomena. It was something else, and that's when this began in 1969. It got the attention of the whole nation, and lots of articles were written, and reporters went to see what's going on because the phenomena continued. It wasn't just one sighting or so. And then it started to eventually fade away, but it really got the attention of the people. And of course, it interestingly was located into this late 60s, early 70s, when there was, UFOs were very much of interest in the world in general. There was this, you could say, UFO craze in the whole world in general. But that was an important period in Finland when it comes to UFO history here. We go also through history of Suomen UFO-tutkijat, Finnish UFO researchers, like the organization, what they've been doing. We go through important figures like Kalevi Riikonen, born 1950. He's still around, writes books and gives presentations, and so there's lots of material in the internet that one can find from him. He's a contactee, so he says that he's in contact with aliens. And another person mentioned in the chapter is this Rauni-Leena Luukkanen-Kilde, passed away in 2015. If Kalevi Riikonen was like a very positive and kind of world embracing in his views, this Rauni-Leena Luukkanen-Kilde, he was very, very much different. Like she had a very pessimistic and dark view of the world. She was talking about all these classical, like conspiracy theories about Illuminati and how everything is kind of under control of this some huge invisible small circle of people, and how UFOs are also like a part of this and so forth. Totally different kind of a person. And then there is Juha Nafgran, very colorful Finnish documentary movie maker, who's had all kind of interesting claims related to aliens and UFOs. Some of these stories are absolutely hilarious. There is this Seatoin guy, this devil worshipping neo-Nazi. He was also into UFOs, and one of the most funny stories in the books when it comes to UFOs is probably from him. And the story goes that in 1970, he claims that he saw UFOs at his cottage at Vehma. He also wrote an article about this experience and attached a photo of two balls of light in the dark to make more credibility to his story. And to the end of his life, he claimed that these photos had been studied. They had been authenticated, that this was really something extraordinary, something unusual. But after his death, there was this one company, kind of antiquarian place in Turku, who bought lots of Seatoin's stuff. And among the materials was the original photo of this so-called UFO photo. And the guy who bought all of this stuff, he said that, all right, the photo in the magazine is another story. The original picture is something else. The picture published in this magazine of these UFOs is blurred from the original. And the original photo was nothing more, nothing less than bare buttocks of Pekka Airas himself.
What the?
Yeah. That's
oh my gosh.
You need to raise your hat for this kind of prank. But okay, this is crazy stuff. But then there is
that's amazing.
Yeah. That's a real Baron von Münchhausen right there. Anyway, there are other stories in the chapter about people in this UFO scene, and there are people who are way more credible, who you can take seriously, that they are not this kind of show persons, showmen. Seatoin was a showman, but there are people who are way more stable as persons, we could say intelligent maybe, and whose cases have been better reported, who are more interesting. So there's a whole spectrum of persons and also like a reports, like how seriously they can be taken. But well, this goes with the agenda of the book. Like our idea was to paint the general picture of different kind of people and a different kind of groups and a phenomena in general, and give the whole spectrum of people and ideas.
Very interesting, and that is hilarious. To start to tie it all together, towards the end of the show here, where is Finnish occultism now? How is this all of the stories and all these people? How has this evolved, and what does it look like now? What does the scene look like now?
Well, that's a good question. It looks like that we have had a real boom here during the last few years. And I think that the Finnish version of our book that came out in 2015 apparently had a part in it. But our book in Finnish too, like it wouldn't have been that popular unless there was a need.
Yeah.
Kind of a market for it, like that if people were really interested in it. If they weren't, our book wouldn't have been so popular. So it looks like that there's a real like a big interest in Finland to these things in general. And again, the spectrum of the type of interest is all the way from some culture, just like a popular entertainment, to all the way to the other end of the spectrum, to people who are like seriously practicing some sort of esotericism. They are in some groups or they do solo on their own. So there's a whole spectrum of things, but you can find it from a popular culture. Like there's more, I think, than ever or a long time. Like this kind of esoteric elements you can find from popular novels. There are like when it comes to art exhibitions, theater, and so there's all kind of things that weren't there before. And when it comes to the groups, there are the old groups that have been like around for 100 years or more. The Freemasons are there, the Odd Fellows are there, the Spiritualistic Society is there, Theosophical Society, Anthroposophy, Amorc, all of that is still there. But we also have these neo-pagan groups, and they are plenty in different forms, different kind of groups. There are lots of them. There are also these left-hand path organizations. The Ordo Templi Orientis is also here. The Gurdjieff societies here, all active. Gnostic Society. And in addition to all of these, there are also podcasts, like publishers, all kind of interesting elements. And why this is so, I don't know, but clearly there is some kind of a boom. I think the last time Finland has something like this, it was probably in the late 60s, 70s, when it comes to how much books, this kind of books were published and bought and talk in the popular media. And so that was probably 60s, 70s, the last time there was something this big. But I think this is now even bigger. I don't know why, but like things in general in culture, like they seem to go and come in waves. Sometimes they are up, then they go down, and then they come up again. And well, now we seem to be having this kind of a boom that they are very, very popular.
Do you guys, we had something that's called the Satanic Panic here in America. Did you guys have a similar thing over in Europe, Scandinavia? And what's the general feeling, the non-practicing, kind of more mundane culture? How do they look at all of this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is good question. We covered this in the last chapter, the 15th chapter, like when this satanic panic was going on, especially in the States and the UK. It came like all kind of new ideas in general. They came to Finland with a little delay, like 1-2 years later. And the effect was very, very minimal. Like we didn't get, thank God, anything like that was in the States or in the UK. Like there was like a few mentioned in national TV. The Christians, these more fundamentalist Christians, they were of course drumming to the cause as much as they could. Some Christians published this absolutely hilarious C-tape about alleged connections between Satanism and rock music and how this was dangerous to the youth and so. But there was nothing like these very ugly cases that, like in the States, that families were broken and all these horrible court cases and stuff. Nothing like that happened here. We got some attention from the press to this topic too, but it was very small. In general, Finnish public look at what is this? And I remember there was this one psychologist, Pertti Virtanen, on television analyzing this phenomenon. He said that I think that we should be more worried about people who see devils everywhere. Like this is way more dangerous than listening to some rock music, some heavy metal music. And I think this reflected very well the general atmosphere in Finland in general. Like people weren't really that worried about it. And some were, of course, like when it comes to Christian circles, there was that was a receptive ground for that. But in general, it was luckily quite lame, which was good.
Yes, very good. What's the state of religion in general presently? I mean, Christianity seems to be shrinking in a lot of countries and areas. Is there kind of a pagan resurgence there? Or is there other influences, Buddhism, that kind of thing?
When it comes to Finland, like it needs to be mentioned that we have evangelic Lutheran Christianity. Yeah. It's basically a state religion. It's like a state, and the church is not separated in Finland. But it's very important to know, like if somebody just looks from Wikipedia or wherever, like how is religion in Finland, and they find out that, they have a state religion. It sounds like that people here are like super religious or super Christian or something. No way. Like we are a so secular nation that it's like this mention about a state church, that's basically a joke. Like most of the people who are members of the church, I think it's not nowadays, is it around 70% of people are members of the state church, something like that. They go to church only when they want to have these formal rites of passage, like somebody gets a name, a baby, somebody gets married. They like to get it in a cool environment, like it's better than doing a civil ceremony in magistrate where it's just a boring room. It's more cool, right? A huge church, and the family likes it. or where somebody dies, like again, then we go to church. But otherwise, like on the weekends or in the middle of the week, the churches are absolutely empty. Like they are just like it's a cultural habit and institution in this kind of way. But when it comes to Finns' beliefs, Christianity is it's really not very strong. Then there are, of course, like all the other main world religions you can find from here, but they are not as big in numbers as Christianity. You can find Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, all the rest, and all these alternative esoteric groups too. These are really like a minuscule, absolutely small in number compared to, let's say, Christianity or any of these more known religions. But there is some really genuine, like spiritual, you could say, like activity involved. Like people who tend to be in these smaller groups, they are like really dedicated. They are serious about it because, of course, it's your choice, and you are not there like because it's just some tradition that we just do because it's been done. So this is kind of a general cultural ground. You can find all possible world religions from here and esoteric currents, but because we are a small country, we have only around 5.5 million inhabitants to begin with. Of course, like the number of members of these groups too are quite small. Yeah.
Thanks, Janus. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I was delighted by this interview, and I'm very satisfied with where we went with it.
Good. Anything else, Vesa, that you'd like to cover or talk about before we say goodbye?
Well, first of all, thanks to you for having me on. It was an honor. And if anybody wants to find more about the books, we have a Facebook page and Instagram page, and there's a bit more photos than in the book, and most of them are in color, and there's some background stuff that can't be necessarily found from the book, and so that's basically it. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, fascinating book, fascinating discussion. It was really a pleasure to have you and to talk with you. Thank you for giving us this much time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really intriguing, and thank you for spreading the word about the culture, the esoteric culture of Finland, because in the West, it's not something we know very much about. So.
Yeah, this is something that I didn't say, but when it comes to a Finnish, this esoteric occult groups and history in general, although I say it myself, it's true that our book, it's the first of its kind. There not has been a kind of a popular history book that puts these things in the same book, in English. So this is I hope there is a need for this in English market as well, not only in Finnish. So if somebody's interested, although I say it myself, I'm biased, I would still say that that's a pretty good place to start.
Definitely. No, thank you for this work.
Thank you.
Okay, that was Vesa Iitti. Vesa wrote a very interesting book on Finnish occultism and esotericism, Lightbringers of the North. I've been looking forward to this translation for a while. I find the esotericism of northern countries intriguing. My only hope after reading this book is that perhaps there may be some kind of follow-up work that covers the indigenous, say, Sami practices and shamanism. That would really be a treat. I'd love to see, even how those intersect with modern Finnish esotericism. That's something that I don't think was touched much on in the book, but there was so much covered in this survey. It's really interesting. So yeah, I think it was fun to talk about these things, and it's been really fun reading the book. Really interesting experience just learning about these figures. And so I'm grateful for Vesa for coming on the show and talking about all of it. And he was a really friendly, amiable guest, and we're glad to have had him on.
Yeah, very nice guy. And honestly, I knew nothing about Finnish occultism, so it was interesting to read through this, and it's pretty far-reaching. There's quite a spectrum of individuals that he talks about and covers, so you're not stuck with just reading about one group or one person. It jumps around to all different unique and colorful individuals, so it keeps your attention. It is very interesting, but I agree. The indigenous Finnish spiritual practices are definitely interesting to me, and it would be nice to see how the interaction or evolution or influence between the old and the new a little bit more. But overall, yeah, interesting book, interesting guest, and I hope our listeners found it educational. I don't know how well known some of these Finnish characters are, but it's worth knowing about them.
I also think it might be fun to do a show at some point on Finnish Reconstructionist religion. indigenous religion. It might be fun to discuss that with people who are doing it. I'm sure there are, because it's happening all over the world. So I'm sure there's a Finnish version of it, because the Kalevala is an important text. I know that, and it's there's a lot of national identity bound up with it.
Okay. What is the book that you've got for us this week?
The book I'm reading right now is called The Dead Are Alive. They Can and Do Communicate with You, despite the sensationalistic sounding title. This is a very interesting book. This man put out more than one book. He actually founded an ESP Psi Research Institute, and his primary focus was on proving the continued existence of the human soul after death. His name is Harold Sherman. I believe he's passed at this point. This book especially focuses on EVP, electronic voice projection, where EVP started with cassettes, on cassette tapes, cassette recorders. People would attempt to communicate with the dead and be recording it, and then they noticed when they went to play back the cassettes that there were voices sometimes, and some people started attempting to use this as a form of two-way communication with the dead. So it's a pretty interesting thing. Now, I know this falls a little into the quote-unquote paranormal territory, and I'm always hesitant to go in that direction on the show, because there's a lot of so-called ghost hunters and just really, I'm just going to be honest, silly people with silly ideas about the way the spirit world and esotericism even works, who are in the so-called paranormal world. Usually when you hear the word paranormal, it's people who are borderline atheists but believe in ghosts and believe in technology, and they think they're Ghostbusters. But they don't really believe in the reality of deities or spirits, and I'm just speaking very generally. I'm sure there are people in that world that do, but generally speaking, these are, sort of regular folks who don't really believe in the sacred or the divine necessarily, but are interested in ghosts and using cool gadgets to, find out if the ghosts are really there, and then, also go into abandoned buildings and explore them and have infrared cameras and have shows. And that's not a world I want to go into with the podcast. So please don't misunderstand me. This book, on the other hand, was written before the whole craze that we see nowadays. And EVP is a very interesting subject. I'm not sure if EVP is actually the spirits of the dead speaking through tapes or not. I think in some cases it's certainly possible, and in some cases it's probably not the case. But what I do think is that EVP on its own is intriguing, because it does represent some kind of interface between psychic communication and analog technology. Although as far as I understand, there's digital EVP now too. Personally, I'm disinclined to see digital EVP as necessarily as valid, because I think that there's something to the process of magnetic recording that is part of the reason why it becomes possible for the discarnate, or for people unconsciously psychically projecting, to be recorded. But this book is very interesting. It's filled with firsthand accounts. There's even in one chapter directions on how to do EVP yourself and create a sort of setup to do it. And it also goes beyond EVP in the book and just talks about the continued existence of souls after death, and different people and different families and things that have experienced, legitimate proof that there is somebody who they knew who had passed on, who was communicating with them. So it's called The Dead Are Alive. They Can and Do Communicate with You. It's by Harold Sherman. Again, interesting book. I think it does touch on mediumship as well, which is something we've covered in our show, especially when we were dealing with certain indigenous magical religious practices. We touch on mediumship because true mediumship is a method of communicating with the dead, and spirits do exist. And so I think because of that overlap, this book is worth mentioning.
Yeah, sounds interesting. I tend to not be super into the paranormal stuff, but this one does sound like it would be good. Okay, on that note, I think we're going to wrap up early. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.